tub, but then it comes so easily to me. No real pleasure, I assure you, ma'am. What a bit of luck meeting you, observed the bully. A real piece of good fortune for both of us. Why, what do you mean? Asked. Well, look at me now, replied the barge woman. I like washing too, and for the matter, whether I like it or not, I have got to do all my own natural as I do. Now my husband, he's such a fellow for shirking his work to me that never a moment do I get for seeing to my own affairs. Ought to be here now, either steering or attending to the horse, though luckily enough to attend to himself, instead of which he's gone off with the dog to sup a rabbit for dinner somewhere. Says he'll catch me up at the next. Well, that's all, and that's as may be. I don't trust him with that dog, who's worse than he is. But meantime, get on with my washing. Oh, never mind about the washing, said Toad, taking the subject. Try and fix your mind on that rabbit, and I'll be bound. Got any onions? I can fix my mind on anything, said the large woman. And I wonder you can be taught such a joyful prospect before you. There's a mine that you'll find in a corner of the cabin. If you'll just take two of the most necessary sort, I venture to describe them to a lady who will recognize them at a glance, and put them through the wash tub as why it'll be a handy and soapy and a kettle. It'll be a pleasure to you, as you rightly say, and a real help to me. You'll find a tub of soap and a kettle on the stove and a bucket to haul up water from the canal with. I'll know you're enjoying yourself instead of sitting here idle looking at the scenery and yawning your head off. Here, you let me steer, said Toad, now thoroughly frightened, and then on with your washing your own way. I might spoil your things, or I'm more used to gentlemen's things myself. It's my special line. Let you steer, replied the barge woman, laughing. It takes some practice to barge properly. Besides, it's dull work, and I want you to be happy. No, you are so fond of, and I'll stick to the steering that I understand. Don't try and deprive me of the pleasure of giving you a treat. Toad was fairly. He looked for escape this way and that, saw that he was too far from the dying leap, and sullenly resigned himself to his fate. If it comes to that, he suppose any fool can wash. He fetched tubs, soap, and other enough from the cabin, selected a few garments at random, tried to recollect what he had casual glances through laundry windows, and set to. A long half every minute of it saw Toad getting crosser and crosser, nothing that he seemed to please them or do them good. He tried coaxing, he tried slapping. They smiled back at him out of the tub, unconverted, happy in their. Once or twice he looked nervously over his shoulder at the barge woman, but gazing out in front of her, absorbed in her steering. His back ached bad. He noticed with dismay that his paws were beginning for the 50th time. A burst of laughing himself up and look around. The barge woman was leaning back and laughing till the tears ran down her cheeks. I've been watching you all the time. I thought you must be a humbug all along, from the conceited way you talked. You are. Never washed so much as a dishcloth in your life, I'll lay. Which had been simmering viciously for some time now, fair over, and he lost all control of himself. You common low, fat bard! Don't you dare to talk to your betters like that! Washerwoman, indeed! I am Toad, a very well-known, respectable, distinguished Toad. I may be under a present, but I will not be laughed at by a barge woman. The woman moved and peered under his bonnet keenly and closely. Why, so you are, she cried. Well, a horrid, nasty, and crawly Toad, and in my night too. Now that is a thing that I will not have. She relinquished a moment. One big mottled arm shot out and caught Toad by a foreleg, or gripped him fast by a hind leg. Then the world turned suddenly upside down to flit lightly across the sky. The wind whistled in his ears, while flying through the air, revolving rapidly as he went. The water, which it with a loud splash, proved quite cold enough for his taste, though its chill was not sufficient to quell his proud spirit, or slake the heat temper. He rose to the surface, spluttering, and When he had wiped his eyes, the first thing he saw was the fat barge woman looking back over at him, earnest of the retreating barge and laughing, and he vowed as he to be even with her. He struck out for the shore, but greatly impeded his efforts, and when at length he touched land, he found it hard to bank unassisted. He had to take a minute or two's rest to recover his breath. Gathering his wet skirts all over his arms, he started to run after the barge as fast would carry, wild with indignation, thirsting for revenge. Laughing when he drew up level with her. "Put yourself through your mango washer, woman," and iron your face and crimp it, and you'll pass for quite a decent-looking toad. Toad never paused to reply. Solid revenge was what he wanted, not cheap triumphs, though he had a thing or two in his mind that he would have say. He saw what he wanted ahead of him, running swiftly as he on the horse, unfastened the tow rope, and cast off, jumped light, and urged it to a gallop by kicking it vigorously in the sides. He stopped, abandoning the tow path and swinging his steed down a rusty lane. Once he looked back, he saw that the barge had run aground on the other side of the canal and was gesticulating wildly and shouting. "Stop! Stop! I've heard that song before," said Toad, laughing as he continued to spur his steed on a wild career. The barge horse was not capable of any effort, and its gallop soon subsided to a trot, and its trot into an easy walk, contented with it, knowing that he, at any rate, was moving. The barge, he had quite recovered his temper, now that he had thought really clever, and he was satisfied to jog along quietly in the sun, taking any byways and bridle paths, and trying to forget how very long he had had a square meal, till the canal had been left very far. He had travelled some miles, his horse and he was feeling drowsy when the horse stopped, lowered his head, and began to nibble grass. And Toad up first saved himself from falling off by an effort. He looked about him and found a wide common, dotted with patches of gorse and bramble. Near him stood a dingy gypsy caravan, and beside it a market turned upside down, very busy smoking and staring into the wide world. A fire of sticks was burning nearby, and over the fire hung an iron pit, and came forth bubblings and gurglings, and a vague suggestive steaminess. Also smells, warm, rich, and varied smells that twined and twisted and wreathed themselves at last into one complete voluptuous smell that seemed like the very soul of nature taking form and appearing to her a true goddess, a mother of solace and comfort. Toad now knew he had not been really hungry before. What he had felt today had been a mere trifling qualm. This was the real thing at last, and it would have to be dealt with steadily, too, or there would be somebody or something. He looked the gypsy over carefully, wondering vaguely easier to fight him or cajole him. So there he sat, biffed, and looked at the gypsy, and the gypsy sat and smoked and looked at him. The gypsy took his pipe out of his mouth and remarked in a careless way, "Want to sell that there horse of yours?"